Hello and welcome again to DieCastRestos. Jason here with the 42A evening news van. Now this model is based on the Bedford CA van. It was in the range from 1957 until 1965. And although it doesn't look it, it is meant to be advertising the Evening News, which was a real newspaper in the UK, in particular in London, until it merged with the Standard to later become the Evening Standard. The model is missing its headboard with the advertising hoardings on it. It's not too badly scratched, but it's pitted in places where it has been scratched. Being an A-series model and an early model at that, it will have very thick paint. So I could tell early on this would be a particularly difficult restoration. So first of all, I ground down the crimped axles using my Dremel. Then I drilled out the single front rivet post. Then I used a flat-bladed screwdriver to remove the base. The base popped out, and then that is that. These are the two main components of the model. So here are all 8 components that I had, excluding the headboard which I had to order in. I used a 1.5mm drill bit to drill out the post, and then used a bit of brake fluid to lubricate the post and then tap it with my screw tap. Here I filed down the edges of the post so the base would fit back over it. As you can see here, the axles are quite rusty, so I popped them in my drill, and you can see here a before and after. Quite a difference. Now I used my trusty paint stripper in an attempt to remove the paint, giving it a good coating all over. After leaving it for quite some time, you can see that it did barely anything whatsoever, so I attempted some drastic measures. The outcome here, it cleared the inside, but the outside it was still slathered in paint. So I decided to try my lighter techniques first, of just using a wire brush. Try and get under the paint and make it bubble a little bit. But that really didn't seem to do a great deal. It made it slightly thinner in places, but mainly scratched up the surface. Then a wire brush attached to the rotary tool did nothing either. So I used a sanding tool, which was probably a mistake in retrospect, but I was getting desperate at this point. I have since been recommended using some caustic soda. But you can see here that the paint does come off, but it did leave a bit of a scratched surface. The base was absolutely fine, that thin layer of black paint came off in an instant. But the rest of the model here, after I'd worked away at it for a while, did come out quite nicely. It's a nice casting here, but there are a few scratch marks there that I needed to fill in. So now I'm just going to use my fine Tamiya primer on the base, and then do the same for the body itself. I put the headboard in, which I'd obtained online, so that I'd get a nice even coat, particularly when spraying the colour paint. So as you can see here, it's picked out all of the edges and details fairly nicely. The casting on the rear doors, however, was fairly thin, so I used my metal file just to try and highlight those lines a little more. So for the main colour of the vehicle, I used Tamiya's TS47 rattle cam, and this is chrome yellow. Hopefully I can use this yellow for a number of models. Yellow seemed to be a bit of a running theme in the early stages of Matchbox models. So it may not match the original exactly, but there is a lot of variation within the range, so I think this is fairly justified. Again, leaving in the headboard so the colour would match. I wasn't too fussed about this being removable at all, just save it being lost in future. Here you can see after one spray, it's quite a light coat. I did need about 3 coats in total in the end. But I was fairly happy with the overall colour at least anyway. And the base just had a coat of the Tamiya TS14. Using the original axles, I just applied quite a bit of force using my pliers with the flat edge. Once the crimping was done, I used my silver paint pen to repaint the hubs. And also highlighted the ends of the crimped axles. So I removed the screw and popped the base back in. with the tab end first. And it easily clips back in. And push down on the front end onto the rivet post. I can then reapply the screw. Remarkably simple and straightforward model, especially when they don't have windscreens or interiors. Next I use my chrome pen from Molotov to fill in the grille on the front bumper and also the headlights. I found I had to directly apply from the pen just to give it a thicker layer. Here you can see the reproduction transfers that I'd obtained. The headboard and the newspaper grating for the side, as well as the evening news sticker for the side of the van, which I'll apply first here. First thing I did was wet the area with a cotton bud, and then I can apply the transfer itself. I missed this because my hands were entirely in the way of the camera, so for the next one it was a little more straightforward. I could pull off the transfer straight from the water, and I can reposition it using the tweezers or also the cotton bud. Funnily enough, I had a much harder time at applying these transfers than I did my first ever video, which was my only previous attempt at doing transfers, and they work perfectly first time. So if you want to go and check out episode 1 of my series, that is the 14C Lomas ambulance, please do go and check that out. I apologise for the absolute shocker of a display I'm putting on here. It was constant readjustment and I was getting extremely frustrated. Eventually you can squeeze out the excess water from underneath the transfer and it will begin to set. Finally, I'll apply the newspaper clippings, which just go on the side of the doors in an allocated area. These easily just slide into place. And again, you can just use a cotton bud to reposition and then squeeze out that excess water by rolling over. Trying not to tear it in any way by pushing down too hard or using the tweezers as such directly onto the body. Now, down to the lack of components on this model, it's a relatively quick video today, so we're already at the stage where I can do the grand reveal. So as you can see, we started out with this metal wheeled model of the Bedford CA van for advertising evening news. The detail on the back there had disappeared a little just through play wear. It wasn't too badly damaged paint wise, the front end had seen a lot more damage than the rest. But obviously in need of a new headboard and the new transfers as well. So I decided to give this one a new lease of life, and here you can see the final product. I'm really quite pleased with the final outcome because this model caused me a few problems, particularly with the paint, hence why it's taken so long to upload the next video in my series, and also with the transfers, which took forever to actually set. I particularly had trouble with the evening news transfer on the side. It's very thin, and because it's a clear backing on it, it's very hard to see. So this is my first model from the A series, and I've really enjoyed doing it. It's quite nice giving it the transfers back and also repainting that front grille just to give it a little bit of a sparkle. Anyway, that's enough from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye bye.